Whenever you have troubles falling asleep, you get the exact same advice no matter where you look. You shouldn't drink any caffeine right before bed, and ideally you should stop drinking it after lunch. You shouldn't drink any alcohol, you should regularly exercise, you shouldn't eat a heavy meal just before going to bed. Your bedroom should be completely dark, quiet and cold, ideally below 22 degrees Celsius. You should avoid any artificial lighting in the hours leading up to you going to sleep. And on that same note, you should avoid your phone and any screen time right before bed as well. And yet here you are, you've watched all of these videos, you've implemented all of these tips, and you still cannot fall asleep. At least this was the case for me until I followed the 2 tips that I'm gonna share with you in this video. And don't get me wrong, this is not to discredit all of the other things I just mentioned, because these are still very valid and very important points. For example, caffeine is literally a psychoactive substance that reduces the sleep pressure and makes you less fatigued. And because caffeine has a half-time of 6 hours, this is where the recommendation of no caffeine after lunch comes from. Caffeine also lowers the average amount of time that you spend sleeping, and it reduces the amount of deep sleep that you get per night. Meaning that even if you sleep for the same amount of time, you will feel less rested the next morning due to getting less deep sleep. The same goes for regular exercise. If you hit the gym on a regular basis and you stop for whatever reason for a week or so, you will start to notice the difference because your sleep will start to suck. Regarding lighting, it's the same story. Besides the entire biochemistry that's going on with light inhibiting melatonin synthesis, melatonin being a hormone that's produced during the night when you're supposed to sleep, most people will not be able to fall asleep when a bright light is shown straight into their face. Maybe except you're ex-military, but these people can sleep anywhere at any time and it's kind of a superpower. So if you have troubles falling asleep, then you should first look at all of these factors that I listed in the beginning, because these are the basics and you should get the fundamentals right before trying anything else. However, if you've tried all of those and you've implemented all of them and you still cannot fall asleep, here's my 2 tips that you should look at. Number 1 is about your sleep schedule. I'm sure most of you have heard that you should sleep between 7 and 9 hours every night to feel well rested. But it's not just enough to sleep 8 hours at any point during the day. It also matters when you sleep. And I'm not talking about chronotypes. I don't care whether you go to bed at 9 p.m. or at 1 in the morning. But the important thing is that you keep your sleep schedule consistent, meaning that you go to bed and you get up in the morning at the exact same time of the day every single day, including the weekend. For me, with my current life circumstances, with work, that means I usually go to bed at 11 in the evening because I need to get up at 7 the next morning. And this really sucked at first, because who the fuck gets up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning? Because most of us think of the weekend as the time when you can sleep in and catch up on that sleep debt that you accumulated during the week. But besides half of the day almost being gone if you only get up at 11 in the morning on a Sunday, having these 2 very different sleeping schedules really messes with your sleep overall. Let's think the whole thing through to make it a little bit clearer. Imagine you get up on 11 in the morning on a Sunday. Now, the next day on Monday, because of work, you have to get up at 7 in the morning. So in order for you to get 8 hours of sleep, you'd have to go to bed at 11 p.m. on Sunday evening. Now, that also means at that point, you've only been awake for about 12 hours and probably you're not feeling very tired. Which also means that you're probably going to stay up late until midnight or 1 in the morning. And so by the time you fall asleep and then the time you have to get up the next morning, you will not have gotten sufficient sleep that night. And thus, the cycle of accumulating more sleep debt is starting over again. Now, if you want or have to fix some sleep debt, I'd rather go to bed a little bit earlier, but get up in the morning at the same time, because that way you will not mess with the sleep of the following night. Now, of course, with social obligations and meeting friends, maybe it's not practical to stick to the weekday sleep schedule also on weekends. And in these cases, it's totally fine to shift it by plus minus 1 hour. In my case, for example, it would be totally okay if I go to bed at midnight and then get up at 8 the next morning, which is something I also sometimes do. But you really shouldn't shift your sleep schedule too much, so I wouldn't go above 1 hour, because otherwise it's essentially the same as if you were crossing multiple time zones over the weekend. And this is why this phenomenon of having two different sleeping schedules is also called social jet lag. Now, having a consistent sleeping schedule is what I call quite analytical. Same as limiting your caffeine intake or having a dark bedroom. This is something external that you can control, you can influence it, you can track it, you can monitor it, and you can intervene if you notice that you're falling off track. And as a biochemist, I really like that I can put a number to it. However, you cannot really do this with my second tip. The second big factor that really influences how fast you can fall asleep is your mindset, your mood, and your thoughts. Because if your mind is not in the right place, if you're completely stressed out, if you're worried about things, and if you have 1,000 thoughts rushing through your head, you will not be able to fall asleep at night. In my case, that is because I'm quite unhappy with my current job. I'm thinking about switching careers quite drastically. And to be honest, I'm a little afraid. For you, it might be quite different. It might be financial. It might be a recent breakup that you went through. It might be exams at university or school. It might be some health problems that you have. Whatever it is, if you haven't figured it out and if you haven't solved it, it will keep you up at night. So why does it keep us up at night specifically? Usually we are very good at keeping ourselves busy. Either we're actually busy by doing chores or work or taking care of kids, for example, or we keep ourselves artificially busy by reading, watching YouTube videos, scrolling social media, whatever it is. But the key point here is that most of us don't consciously take the time during the day to think these things through. But these thoughts don't just disappear. What will happen instead is that they come back when you're less busy. And usually that is when you're sitting on a toilet, taking a shower, or trying to fall asleep. So how can you tackle this problem? Well, it would be easy to say just don't have any problems at all, but we're humans and we're always going to have problems in life. So what really helped me is very cliche, but journaling. Because if I put all of my thoughts on paper, then they're not bothering me anymore. If I want to, I can go and look them up, but they're out of my head, so to speak. The second thing you can and should do, just for overall health, but also for this problem particularly, is to have a healthy social circle. Be it friends, family, co-workers, just have people with whom you can talk about whatever is on your mind, and also just have a good time with them, because this will lower your anxiety, lower your stress levels, and if you can talk about it with someone, usually this solves quite a big chunk of the problem already. Now, on this topic, I also have a bonus tip. Whenever you can, have something on the next day that you're looking forward to. Because if you have something that you're excited about, then your body naturally wants to go to sleep. Because intuitively, it kind of, when subconsciously you know that you have to fall asleep to be well rested in order to enjoy whatever it is to the fullest extent. And then with all that being said, I want to emphasize that if you occasionally have trouble falling asleep, this is completely normal. And even the best sleep hygiene, even if you follow all of the tips in this video and in other videos, it will occasionally happen that you just cannot fall asleep for whatever reason. However, if you have troubles falling asleep consistently and on a regular basis, then you should really try and figure out the reason for it and try to get to the bottom of the issue. And if you cannot solve it by yourself, don't shy away from seeking professional help as well. Now with that, I wish you a good night, and as always, thanks for watching.